Welcome to another edition of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton. And of course, NFL draft time has just passed by. And of course, the place where most of the coverage was ESPN. So I figured, let's bring someone in that's, been there for a while, seen a lot of different changes of the coverage and everything in the NFL draft, and someone that's one of the best personalities on ESPN radio. So everyone, welcome, Mr. Freddie Coleman. How you doing?
I'm good, brother Mike. Hope I can live up to that introduction you just gave me. So we'll see how this is going to go.
Hey, you always do every time you're on the air. But kind of getting into it, plenty don't ask you about this, but of course we know you're a Mansfield University Hall of Famer. And I want to ask you, nobody really asked you about your athletic career.
Right.
So I figured I would ask you, how was Freddie Coleman the football player?
He was okay. He was the kind of person that always loved practice, because I always believe that anytime you're going to be better at something, you have to work on your reps and get those reps in. And especially, Mike, the first year where I didn't get any playing time in the varsity. So for me, varsity games were Monday through Friday when it came to practice. Even though I was on the scout team, I was going to do everything I could to make sure that the starting guys on defense got a great look with the plays we ran for the opposing offense that we were going to play each and every week. So I treated each and every practice as if that was my chance to get my shine on, knowing that I didn't know where exactly it was going to lead, but I was going to give it everything I had. And I think by having that work ethic and carrying that through, even when I became a varsity player and a starting varsity player, that was the main difference for me, while I was able to succeed, and thrive, instead of just staying where I was at and thinking that was only going to be my ceiling, just being on the scout team as a walk-on at Mansfield University in Pennsylvania.
All right. Well, I was going to ask you, because my mind was going to Mansfield, and I was thinking New Jersey for some reason. I have no idea why, but I was.
A lot of people, it's funny you mentioned that, because there's a Mansfield, Ohio. And when I first told people I went to school at Mansfield University, they thought, boy, that's a long way to go from where you live at in New York to the state of Ohio. And I had to convince them and say, no. It's a long way away, but it's not that far away, where it's in the state of Pennsylvania. And it's about an hour north of Williamsport, where they have the Little League World Series. And it's really, really beautiful area up there in the Tiger County area where Mansfield University is.
Gotcha. So I need to take a note there. That's Pennsylvania,
Mm-hmm.
not New Jersey,
Right.
Little League World Series.
Exactly.
So I got to ask, also, you said about practice, and your games were Monday through Friday when you were on the scout team, things like that. So how did that transition and that work ethic kind of help you transition into your career after football, production, things like that?
It's a really good question, Mike, because the one thing you learn about having a chance to get those reps in is that you're willing to put the time in, and you see exactly what you're going to get out of that. It's the old line from the Stephen A. Smith commercial, what you put out, you get out what you put in. And I tell young people that all the time. If you don't put the work in, it's going to show. If you do put the work in, if you put the time in, it's going to show. And when you have that competition level and you're competing against yourself to be better each and every day, it'll blow your mind exactly how much of a path that you can kind of create and how long that path is going to be. And it's going to continue to be a continuous thing when it comes to that. So that was the one thing. And I already had that work ethic anyway. Before I got to Mansfield University, I was very blessed to have a mom and dad that showed me exactly what work ethic looked like, and what a lack of work ethic was not going to be a part of the program when it came to the Coleman family. So I was able to transfer that from the football field to just competing in media, whether it was going after a job or making sure I was going to be better at that job when I got my first job out of college, or transitioning to doing things on TV and also everything else. Having that competition factor in my mind and competing against myself, as well as that work ethic, it has been able to have me to have a lot more success than I think even I could have imagined when I first got started back in 1988.
Long time. But hey, the one thing I will say is that means that work ethic has provided you staying power in the industry. So
there's no doubt about that. Absolutely. And those are the kind of things that are going to be the great feeding my soul, that no matter what happens, no one can ever say that I'm going to mail it in, because that's not how I get down.
Understood. Now, I have to ask, because you were to me, you were the pioneer of ESPN radio. So how was that transition to kind of get started at ESPN radio, where there was not, at that point in time, there wasn't a lot of talk about it, and you were it pretty much. To me, you were it.
I give a lot of credit to Bruce Gilbert, who was the first general manager that I had at ESPN Radio, because apparently he heard something in me that I don't think anybody else heard or maybe didn't want to hear. I have no idea from that standpoint, Mike, but I think it's a prime example that it's not about the rejections that you get. It's about the one person that's going to give you a chance, because that's going to supersede any other rejections or any doors closing in your face that you had to go through. And I never thought in a million years, Mike, that I was going to be working at ESPN Radio, because I was pretty comfortable working in Albany, New York, which is an underrated sports market. They have terrific fan bases of different teams. It's not just Giants or Jets or Buffalo Bills. There are a lot of Packers fans in the Capital District. There are a lot of Cowboys fans in the Capital District. There are a lot of Steelers fans in the Capital District, but they love all sports. They love football. They love basketball. They love baseball. They love hockey. So I was pretty comfortable after having just gotten there in February 2004, that if I could be there for a long time, that was success to me, especially working in a major market like I was able to do when I was in music radio working in New York City. So when Bruce Gilbert heard my audition tape for Game Night at that time, I don't know what he heard. I didn't bother asking him. I was just glad that he heard it. And I felt that I was going to make sure that the justification that he had in me, that faith was not going to go unrewarded. So each and every time, I've always had that as a major, major point in my life to say, I always want to justify the faith that Bruce Gilbert and Dave Zaslowski, who was the program director, and Jason Barrett, who was the producer at that time, that those three guys had that kind of faith to believe that I could do this on a national level. Who knew how long it was going to last? You told me, Mike, it was going to be 18 years working at ESPN Radio. I know how hard it is the last 18 minutes in our business. So to have a chance to do that almost 18 years this coming June, I know exactly how fortunate, how blessed I really am.
Speaking of being fortunate, blessed, and instilling faith in, there were plenty of draft picks that are hoping to instill faith and great things in the organization that had faith to draft them. And of course, we had the draft that went Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. You had some surprises. You had some not so subtle surprises. You had some things that just nobody expected. So what do you think? How do you think the draft went? How did you get to watch any of it? Did you enjoy it?
I always enjoy the NFL draft, Mike, because I tell everybody all the time, everybody thinks they know, but nobody really knows about an inexact science when it comes to evaluating players and deciding who to draft and who not to draft. If somebody went too high, if somebody went too low, if a team, for example, on the lines of New York Jets were able to get 3 first-round draft picks and you get a guy that you wanted when it comes to Garrett Wilson at number 10, but then Sauce Gardner lands in your lap at number 4, then you trade back into the first round, you get a Jermaine Johnson who fell all the way down to Florida State defensive end. And I knew it was going to be like this, because when you don't have a quarterback as a marquee name that has to be drafted at the top of the draft, it was going to be a very wide open and unpredictable draft. And that's normally the case anyway. But I said to everybody, Mike, who will listen, this is going to be the most unpredictable and wide open draft that we've seen in the NFL in the last 20 to 25 years. And we saw exactly that by so many teams, either trading at different spots, having a player fall to them, not reaching for a quarterback, because a lot of people thought potentially 3 quarterbacks could go in the first round. Well, Kenny Pickett was the only one that went in the first round at number 20 to Pittsburgh, when many people believed that if they had to make a choice, that Malik Willis of Liberty was going to go there. So it's always intriguing when you have a chance to have not so much watch the NFL draft, but I was telling people, Mike, we absorb the NFL draft because we're so vested in what our team is going to do or not going to do. But then what are other teams in your division, how you're going to have to deal with that, being a fan of those teams and seeing what they're going to do. So it's always a fascinating, what I like to call a science project each and every year when it comes to the NFL draft.
Speaking of, inexact science and, for lack of a better word, strange thing, questionable pick that a lot of people are talking about is the New England Patriots taking Cole Strange in the first round. Now, what was your reaction when you saw that pick from the Patriots?
You know what, Mike? I normally get surprised by picks, and you have that whoa factor, or what I call the foot in the ice bucket factor, where you just whip your head around. Should we really be surprised by anybody that the New England Patriots go after this is like the ultimate Bill Belichick pick, that he's always been really diligent trying to find players that nobody would think of. And it doesn't matter if it's a first round guy or a second round guy or third round guy. I think that's why so many people were surprised that he decided to take Mac Jones last year, where it seemed that he may wanted to go a different direction, but you can't pass on a guy that could be a potential franchise quarterback for your football team. So when I heard about that, my initial thought was, oh my goodness. But then my second thought was, yeah, this is something that Bill Belichick would do no matter what round that is. And to me, the best part about that draft pick was that they didn't have any film on him. It didn't matter if it was ESPN, ABC, or the NFL Network. And it's not as if Tennessee Chattanooga is a dirtbag program. They've been pretty good in FCS football. But no one is thinking about that being a football factory when it comes to Tennessee Chattanooga. And the fact that Bill Belichick decided to take a first-round pick on a guy that nobody had film on was the most Belichickian thing that Bill Belichick could do in the history of doing Belichickian things, especially when it comes to the NFL draft.
Yeah, it definitely threw me off. The only reason I heard of him is because of Teron Davenport, because he actually had Cole Strange on his show. For those that aren't aware, that are listening and watching, Teron Davenport covers the Tennessee Titans for ESPN, and he had Cole Strange on there, which is one of the draft prospects who eventually, of course, got drafted by the New England Patriots. Speaking of the Tennessee Titans, they ended up selecting Malik Willis in the third round, which a lot of people did not expect him to be there. But hence, he's there. What did you think of that pick when that happened?
He fits what they do. A physical, tough-minded quarterback that can make plays with his legs. And we know that Ryan Tannehill is definitely in make it or break it mode when it comes to 2022. When you have 3 interceptions in a playoff game, when you were the number 1 seed in the AFC, and you allowed that to happen for the Cincinnati Bengals to beat you on your home field, a lot of that blame, and justifiably so in my opinion, should fall at the feet of Ryan Tannehill. So if you're the Tennessee Titans, it's all about, can Ryan Tannehill handle the fact that there's going to be a guy that's going to be competing for his job and that wants that job sooner than later. And especially, Mike, when it comes to Malik Willis, he's going to be motivated, because I'm sure he thought he was going to be a first-day selection. That's why he was invited to the NFL Green Room in Las Vegas, and just seeing pick after pick after pick after pick happen in the first round and nobody selecting him. You're going to have a young man that's going to be pretty motivated anyway, getting to the National Football League, but he's really going to be motivated to show people that they missed out on him, that they should have drafted him earlier. That's another factor that's going to be a part of this whole process, where Ryan Tannehill's feeling that kind of pressure playing for the Tennessee Titans and trying to make sure that he's not out of a job in 2023. And how much up to speed can Malik Willis get if Ryan Tannehill falls short and they have to go find a quarterback, or believe that they have one in their roster by taking him as a second-day pick?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting to watch. I mean, honestly, in my opinion, I think he's going to be a guy that sits and watches, and then in 2023, he's the guy. To be honest, that's the way I think about it. One guy he's not going to be able to throw to, though, is A.J. Brown. Now A.J. Brown, of course, got traded to the Philadelphia Eagles on draft day, gets a 4-year, $100 million extension, $57 million guaranteed. And, of course, the Titans replace him with Arkansas wide receiver Traylon Burks. Did you see that one coming, and did you expect the Eagles to make that move happen?
Nobody saw that coming, but it says a lot about the Philadelphia Eagles, and we talk about putting pressure on a quarterback, Mike. They now have weapons that they believe that Jalen Hurts better be able to make that work, or they will go in a new direction when it comes to 2023. You don't sign off on a $57 million guaranteed contract for 4 years, $100 million for a guy just to be 9-8 or 10-7 in the NFC East. You make these kind of moves not just to win your division, but to compete in what I still believe is a top-loaded, top-heavy NFC, where you got Green Bay, you got Tampa Bay, you got the Los Angeles Rams. And I think there is a gap between those 3 teams and a lot of the teams in the NFC. Now, have the Eagles closed the gap? Well, we'll see. And the reason I hedge my bet on that is that this is all on Jalen Hurts. And can he be able to make it work? I know they believe in his promise, but now they're saying that we expect you to deliver on that promise. We expect you that you're going to be better than Dak Prescott with the Dallas Cowboys. You're going to be better than Carson Wentz of the Washington Commanders. You're going to be better than Daniel Jones of the New York Giants, because right now you have better weapons and a running game that those 3 quarterbacks don't have. And if you're A.J. Brown, you want to show, because he didn't think for a second that the Tennessee Titans were going to trade him, but they were not willing to commit that kind of money that A.J. Brown believed he was going to get. So you go on the cheap and you replace A.J. Brown with a guy that is younger, number one, by getting Burks out of Arkansas. Number two, the same kind of prototype when it comes to kind of receiver that fits that offense. And number three, a guy that has not had knee issues. A.J. Brown has had some knee issues more than a couple of times. So they may have looked at him as a depreciating player. Now you get a younger and cheaper player who's a lot healthy that could be a lot better, more suited to push the ball downfield for your offense.
Yeah, definitely. You made it sound really good for the Titans on the back end of that one. But I definitely would say a lot of Titans fans were a little upset when it came to that trade. But, hey, it is what it is, and, life goes on and things happen, right?
No doubt about that. And in the NFL, Mike, I've said this from time and time again, and the NFL keeps proving me correct each and every year. They're no longer year to year, game to game. It is a second to second league because you can be a 12-5 team one year, and the next year you could be a 4-13 team. You have to revamp your organization, especially when the NFL has created that kind of parity atmosphere where every team believes, especially on draft day, that they've made the right kind of selections where they are not going to stink anymore. There's more hope in Jacksonville, even though this team was completely awful from top to bottom. And a lot of that hope happens because they moved on from Urban Meyer. And they brought in Doug Peters to be the head coach to be a better guy for Trevor Lawrence. But even they feel better about themselves because that's what draft day does. If you believe you made the right pick and picks and you're able to believe you can plug and play those guys into play sooner than later, everybody believes they have more than a chance to do something and be a lot better than they were last year. Unless you are the Rams to win a championship, you want to maintain that and try to make it back to back.
I got to ask you one other question about the draft. Did you see Trayvon Walker going number one, or did you expect Aiden Hutchinson to be the number one pick?
I thought it was going to be Hutchinson, and I clearly understand why they thought that Trayvon Walker should be the pick, but I firmly believe that Aiden Hutchinson is going to be the better player. And if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, if you're going to choose a guy over somebody who I think could be the next great pass rusher in the National Football League, then Trayvon Walker better be the second coming of Lawrence Taylor. Because if he's not, you can make a mistake in the draft. But when you're drafting number one, you can't make a mistake, whether you're drafting a quarterback, whether you're drafting a left tackle, whatever that's going to be. Aiden Hutchinson was one of the top three finishers for the Heisman Trophy, and he single-handedly made people believe in Michigan that they could beat Ohio State. Then they went out there and finally did it last year to win the Big Ten championship and making the college football play before they ran into a bunch of Georgia dudes that were not having it in that semifinal. So if you believe that Trayvon Walker, one of those many defensive picks that left Georgia to go to the National Football League, the most picks by one team in the history of the National Football League, if you believe that Trayvon Walker is the guy, then he better be the dude. Because if he's not, and Aiden Hutchinson turns out to be the dude for the Detroit Lions, a lot of people look at Trent Baalke and say, you had a chance to get that guy to make your team better, but you chose somebody else based on potential. He better live up to that potential. A lot of people believe that he can't do that in the National Football League, but we'll see.
Yeah, definitely is interesting because, what I'm hearing, Baalke looks at him as a Aldon Smith-like ability type player. So that's interesting in its own right. And then, of course, you already invested a few years ago in Josh Allen and then in Chason from LSU. So now this is your third time around. Third time's the charm for them is what they're hoping, I guess. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Especially year one past Urban Meyer, you want as much positivity and goodwill as you can possibly make, and players producing on the field will go a long way to helping that or hurting that when you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and Trent Baalke in charge of these decisions.
Right. And let's make it clear. This decision was more Trent Baalke than it was the owner. The owner wanted Aiden Hutchinson. So I just want to make sure that everyone listening and watching understands that. But moving on, I have a game for you, Freddie.
Okay.
I'm going to have 5 questions. I got 2 answers, and, you got to pick one.
All right. Sounds good.
You ready?
I'm always ready. Let's do it.
All right. On the radio, solo or as a duo?
As a duo. I don't mind doing solo, but it's always cool to have a partner or partners where you can bounce stuff off of. And this way, it's not just one particular voice, especially when you do a 4-hour show. So definitely from the duo side more than the solo side.
All right. Playoff basketball or playoff football?
Playoff football. Although after watching Golden State Memphis in game 1, that almost could change my mind because that was as good as you can possibly get with the Golden State Warriors able to win that game 117-116 over Memphis, and having 3 players below the age of 22 get at least 30 points. First time that's ever happened in NBA history. We had Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson Jr. on one side doing it for Memphis and Jordan Poole doing it on the other side with the Golden State Warriors. But there's something about playoff football where the teams are running onto the field and it's a finality situation. When the game is over, Mike, it's polar emotions where one team is happy because they're surviving and advancing. The other team sees all their hard work go for naught by not winning that playoff game. So playoff basketball is always going to be tremendous, but playoff football for me is always going to be where it's at.
All right. Yeah, I can't pick on either one, to be honest, but I do like the one game, one person moves on scenario better.
Mm-hmm.
All right, TV or radio, because I definitely have seen you on First Take a few times.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely radio, because radio is more of an intimate art form. It really is. And that's not to say that TV is not an art form, but not compared to radio, because people can't see you. So you have to really use your words and paint pictures and paint images and be relatable and be personable and be somebody that even if they disagree with everything you have to say, they're going to tune in because they want to hear exactly what you're going to say. And TV is definitely the higher payer medium, because there are more people that are going to watch TV than actually listen to radio. And that makes me love radio, Mike, even more, because when you get somebody, more often than not, it's really an intimate relationship that you have with that person. TV is such a visceral medium that if you don't like what you're seeing, you can flip the channel. But on radio, you really have to pay attention, and it can't just be something that you see on site. You have to hear and have that contact with your ear and that contact with your soul and that contact with your brain. So it's always going to be radio over TV for me.
All right. Now, both of these guys have done a little radio and a little bit of TV. Stephen A. or Louis Riddick?
Boy, oh boy, that's a tough one, because both of those guys are friends of mine, and Stephen A. Smith is no longer just a personality. He's really a brand when you think about it. And Louis Riddick has done a fantastic job. A guy who I think should be running an NFL team as a general manager. I don't know what teams are waiting for when it comes to Louis Riddick, but I digress. But Stephen A. Smith is that polarizing person. Whether you like or don't like, whether you hate or really love him, he's always going to generate some heat. He's going to generate some emotion. So I'm going to choose Stephen A. Smith from that standpoint, especially when he was cast aside. He's been able to have that kind of resurgence that has gone on ever since he got back to ESPN. And what he's been able to do the second time around is one of the major success stories that a lot of people should talk about more, and not just not hear the bluster, hear the bluster when it comes to Stephen A. Smith.
Gotcha. He definitely knows how to draw the people in and get the people going. And the last one, of course, I know you played wide receiver at Mansfield.
Yeah.
So got to ask a wide receiver question.
Okay.
Terrell Owens or Randy Moss?
Randy Moss, and to me, it's not close, because I think he's the greatest athlete that's ever played the wide receiver position. And I know his numbers should be a lot better. For my money, the best wide receiver ever is Jerry Rice. And one of my favorite quotes about Jerry Rice was when Steve Young said, when somebody asked Steve Young, said, he's not fast enough in the NFL. And Steve Young said, yeah, you're right, until the ball's in the air. Then he's the fastest guy in the National Football League. But in terms of a freak of nature, when it comes to Randy Moss, that he really changed the game the minute that he got drafted. The Cowboys did not draft him. And he slid all the way down to the Minnesota Vikings. And he was around two dudes named Chris Carter and Jake Reed. And you knew immediately the minute that he got there, by the way he performed early on when Randall Cunningham took over quarterback, that he was going to be the best receiver on that football team. He just did so many freakish things on a football field that I remember the first time, Mike, I saw him. They were playing against Army football when he was with Marshall. And they threw like a quick slant pass to him. He evades one guy, dodges another guy, and another guy dove at his leg, so I take him down the ankle, and he hurdled him, and he was in full stride and just pulled away from everybody, scoring a touchdown. I went, oh my God, what is that guy doing at Marshall? That guy should be in the SEC or the Big Ten. And he was able to be an even better pro, because we thought one of the greatest offenses of all time, New England Patriots, even though they lost that game to the New York Giants, Randy Moss was doing things that we didn't think we would ever see from a wide receiver. So as great as Terrell Owens was, for my money, choosing between those two, it's going to be Randy Moss, and to me, it's not even close.
Oh man, you're breaking my heart, man. I think I might say T.O., but but hey, it is what it is. Hey, you got your choice, and that's been the game for this episode. I want to thank you for coming on, Freddie. It's definitely a pleasure. Always a pleasure talking to you. Can you let everyone, if they don't know, which they should know, but can you let everyone know where they can find you on social media and what all you have going on, which I'm pretty sure they should know that too, but I'm going to let you go ahead and tell them. Yeah.
No doubt about that. You can hit me anytime you want on Twitter at Coleman ESPN, also on Instagram at Coleman Experience. And don't forget to catch me and Ian Fitzsimmons on Freddie and Fitzsimmons, 9 p to 1 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN Radio, the ESPN app, Sirius XM Channel 80, TuneIn Radio, and wherever you have a smart speaker.
All right, I'm going to sound like Bomani Jones for a second. When you get on that app, one tap. That's what
Absolutely. Absolutely. And once you tap it once, you don't need to tap anything else again. We got exactly what you need.
There you go. There you go. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you again, Freddie, for coming on. You've been listening to Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out.